might consider suing the federal government because he says California is being forced to pay for some $3 billion a year for taking care of health care, for criminal justice, and for all kinds of things for illegal immigrants. Would you support such a suit? And just how do you think that illegal immigration is hurting your state?
Well, I think governors are going to sue. I doubt very much whether the suits are going to be upheld in court. The problem for the federal government is that this is one of the biggest unfunded mandates. Border control is a federal responsibility. We simply don't enforce our borders adequately. In my state, you have about 2,000 people a day illegally who cross the border. Now, this adds up to about 2 million people who compete for housing, who compete for classroom space. We've had a Medicaid situation where in 1988 there were about 3,000 people on Medicaid. There are well over 300,000 today who are illegal aliens. That presents obvious problems. Now, and my position has been we need to enforce our borders. We can do it. We need to streamline the asylum process and return it to what it should be, rather than a sort of a broad political category. And I think those two things would help dramatically.
And are you, in fact, scapegoating immigrants for your state's other problems?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, my mother was an immigrant to this nation and a naturalized citizen later in her life. No, I think the fabric of this nation is one of a newcomer nation. Having said that, and one of the problems is, and Mr. Ratner just got into that kind of name-calling debate, which polarizes the issue, and so you can't come together. You've got essentially 7 states that are mainly affected by illegal immigrants and immigration in this country. If the 7 states could sit down and work out a policy of how to handle this, we could do some practical legislation that would make sense. But when you get into that kind of incendiary rhetoric that he is now practicing, it presents a very real problem, because anytime you try to do anything except say it's all lovely, you're un-American or you're scapegoating. And it is my belief that the way you protect the front door of legal immigration is to close the back door of illegal immigrants, which you can't control and you can't well provide for.
Well, we have had so many examples of stories of illegal immigrants coming across the border to give birth to their children, allowing their children to then become American citizens. Some people in Congress are beginning to talk about a constitutional amendment that would do something that would really change the way America has been forever, and that is to make a change and not to allow those born in this country to have automatic citizenship. It sounds like it would be very revolutionary.
But see, this is the first time we as a nation have had large-scale immigration since almost the turn of the century, and since the New Deal. As a result, now, because of the New Deal and the Great Society programs, immigration has great financial implications for the highly impacted states. California, as the senator says. The reason immigration is a salient hot topic now is because of cost, crime, and wage depression. We have a far larger immigration program, legal and illegal, than we need for any of our major domestic objectives.
Are you supporting such a constitutional amendment? Are you in favor of that?
The constitutional amendment has been misinterpreted by the Supreme Court. Congress should be able statutorily to make sure that unless the mother has submitted herself to the jurisdiction of the nation by presenting herself at a port of entry for legal admission, the child should take the citizenship of the mother. And that ought to be tested in the Supreme Court. The bottom line, though, is that nobody should be able to come into this country illegally and have a child and entitle that child to all manner of benefits and then not expect there to be some kind of reaction.
The fact that we're discussing immigration, to me, at this point, and making it the issue for the American economy is just ridiculous, as I said. I think that the problems in this country, as I said, are not about immigrants. And the idea that you would actually take away citizenship from an American citizen born here, which was your question, Rita, first of all, it's embedded in the Constitution. It was struggled for in the 14th Amendment. The Civil War was fought over it to make sure that people born here would be citizens. We're not a country like France where, you know, free proud French, that you have to be born French and no one else can be French. You want to, what they want to do, people who would take away citizenship like that, is create a second class of citizens that would be permanently a second class.
Senator
There's no
Feinstein,
evidence in this country that people come in here because they want to be immigrants, because they want to be citizens. There's
Let me
just
ask
no
the Senator
evidence.
this question, because the governor of her state is one of the people who is backing this idea of a constitutional amendment, as I understand it. What's your position on it?
Yep, my position is I do not agree that one should take away the constitutional right of when you're born in this country, you're a citizen. That's what makes America special. But I'll tell you, things like that are going to be seriously considered if the atmosphere is so incendiary that we can't sit down and work out a solution to the problem. And that's one of the problems. You have people in the Congress from small states who don't have immigration problems, making policy, and it very often does not work. I think we can enforce our borders. I think we should enforce our borders. To have a situation where 40% of the babies born on Medicaid in California today are born of illegal immigrants creates a very real problem for the state, which is in deficit.
Look, of course you can enforce the borders.
Let me finish.
I agree.
To have 17% of our prison population at a cost of $300 million a year be illegal immigrants who come here and commit felonies. That's not what this nation is all about.
Of course we can enforce the borders, but let's not fool ourselves or the American people, and let's not play into their fears that that's going to be a remedy for homelessness, for unemployment, or for crime, because it's not. And that's what's going on in this debate. Everybody is looking at those and saying that's the remedy, and it's not the remedy.
It will do one thing. It will stop the flood of 2,000 people day in, day out coming across the border.
Let me tell you, California has benefited by that for 10 years.
Many of your colleagues in Congress and even the Clinton administration are talking about limiting benefits to legal immigrants in this country, saying that welfare that has traditionally been allowed to legal immigrants should be cut because we just don't have enough money for that. What's your opinion on that?
Well, my opinion on it is that we ought to concentrate our efforts as a first step on the issue of illegal immigration and asylum reform. One thing you can hear from this discussion, nothing is going to be solved by people yelling at each other. The only way you're going to solve it is to let people who have the problem. You know, one of the things that I resent is that you got people in New York telling California what California should be doing when it's got a deficit of $10 billion. And I think that's the kind of government that's very upsetting to people. There are certain basic rights. We should keep those rights. But if we don't control the flood of illegal immigrants into this country, we will have, I believe, such a backlash as people who are citizens find they can't find jobs, they can't get health care. It creates an enormous problem.
Now,
the time has come for us to sit down and work out some practical solutions. And they can be worked out.
You've talked about